Federal investigators believe millions of older Jeeps have a safety defect that could result in a deadly fire. Talk of a recall so far has been just that, talk. And in the meantime, more tragedy. Just last week, a teenager burned to death when his Jeep Grand Cherokee was rear-ended near Boston. Tonight, we have even more evidence of a recall under fire. 13 Investigates wants you to hear a recording made behind closed doors. Our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel says what's on the tape is something the government and Chrysler don't want to talk about.
All over the country, fiery crashes and tragic deaths involving older model Jeeps. The government says at least 51 people have died when their Jeep Grand Cherokees and Liberties were rear-ended and burst into flames. The problem? The gas tank. On millions of older Jeeps, it's mounted in the very back of the vehicle, just inches from the rear bumper. There are millions of these older Jeeps still on the road. You probably see them every day. What you don't see is what the government is saying about these Jeeps and about Chrysler behind closed doors.
I'm just going to be blunt. They weren't going to do a damn thing. They weren't.
You're about to hear what the government never meant to be public. But first, how 13 Investigates got this recording and why it's so important.
People are burning to death in Jeeps that need not burn to death in Jeeps.
Safety advocates say when many older Jeeps are hit from behind, their rear-mounted gas tank can rupture, causing a deadly fire. That's what prompted the government to request a recall of 2.7 million Jeep Grand Cherokees and Liberties earlier this year. Chrysler said no, insisting the vehicles are safe and do not contain a defect. Instead, the automaker offered a limited recall involving a very unusual remedy, adding a trailer hitch to provide more protection behind the gas tank on some Jeeps. Chrysler said the recall would begin in July, but months later, Jeep dealers and owners have not heard a word from Chrysler headquarters in Detroit. Chrysler says it is now preparing to implement the recall. But 13 Investigates has learned the government has some serious doubts about whether Chrysler's recall will even do any good. And the evidence comes from an audio tape that's never been heard before.
We don't want this happening. Nobody does.
The audio was recorded here, inside Department of Transportation headquarters in Washington, and it features the head of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Hi, I'm David Strickland.
In early July, David Strickland met behind closed doors with a group of safety advocates and crash victims frustrated about Chrysler's very limited recall.
It's so horrible. I say, how we survive in that car.
Ana Pena was at the meeting. This mother from South Bend suffered burns on 40% of her body when her Jeep was rear-ended and burst into flames. Ana says she's proof a trailer hitch does not protect the Jeep's gas tank.
Your Jeep had a trailer hitch on it?
Yeah.
And it still exploded?
Yeah.
The trailer hitch is a sham.
Clarence Ditlow was at the meeting too. He's director at the Center for Auto Safety, and he says Jeep owners deserve a better solution.
Chrysler is just putting up a game of smoke and mirrors about this.
The most horrific scene you could imagine, watching people burn to death right in front of you.
And Janelle Embry was also at the meeting. She witnessed Okoye Breckenridge and Heather Santor die in a burning Jeep. It prompted her to gather 128,000 signatures for a recall. It was Janelle who recorded inside NHTSA headquarters.
I turned my tape recorder on. There were no signs that said not to.
The recording provides surprising new details, like what it took to get Chrysler to do anything at all.
I'm just going to be blunt. They weren't going to do a damn thing. They weren't. And it took a lot of pushing and prodding and threats and yelling and frankly, my legal department to get ready to say we were going to go to war.
At the meeting, Strickland admitted he isn't sure if Chrysler's proposed trailer hitch will even work.
We have not responded yet because we're still evaluating. So because we're asking, frankly, the very same questions that everybody else at this table is. Does the remedy address the unreasonable risk to safety?
Strickland explained Chrysler presented compelling data that caused NHTSA to rethink its position on some of the Jeeps it originally wanted to recall.
In terms of comparing, fire-related fatalities in these particular vehicles, it was very close to the other peers.
But he said regulators found other Jeep models with a safety risk off the charts, a risk that the government says puts people in danger.
And there's frankly a lot of people that aren't with us at all, you know, from crashes that, you know, frankly, as you noted, that could have been easily walked away from. So while Chrysler has made an offer for a remedy, we will make sure that we are satisfied that the remedy does address the safety need, and there's a lot of work going on with that.
While NHTSA quietly studies the automaker's proposal, Chrysler is making plans to install trailer hitches for a problem it insists isn't really a problem. Joan Claybrook says that doesn't make any sense.
I think putting a trailer hitch on these vehicles is ridiculous.
Claybrook used to run NHTSA years before Strickland got the job. I asked her why the agency has been so quiet about Chrysler's controversial plan.
I have no idea. I'm really disappointed. They're completely letting us down.
Chrysler thinks no recall is necessary. You don't agree with that?
I do not agree with Chrysler one iota. It's time for this vehicle to be recalled and fixed properly.
Claybrook was also in the closed-door meeting with NHTSA. She pleaded with the agency to conduct a crash test to see if trailer hitches will really help. Strickland's response?
I will make no promises because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that, you know, frankly, our engineering team has a maximum amount of flexibility to be able to make good decisions.
Those comments did not impress Janelle Embry.
Really, he danced around the issue a lot. He did not give us any solid word on anything.
But others who attended the meeting are more optimistic.
We're expecting any day for NHTSA to announce the recall remedy doesn't work and for Chrysler to go back to the drawing boards. Recall these vehicles.
NHTSA says its Jeep investigation right now remains open, and it's still trying to figure out if a trailer hitch will improve safety. NHTSA won't say how long that might take. Chrysler won't say exactly when it will begin the recall. The company insists its old Jeeps have no defect and they do not pose an unreasonable safety risk. We've posted recall information and statements from both Chrysler and NHTSA on WTHR.com. I'm Bob Siegel, Channel 13 Eyewitness News.